Thank you. Over to Prasanna.
Good morning, everyone. I think our guest speaker has also joined the call. Before we start, there are two open courses, one on sustainability and one on environmental systems. Today, both the courses will have the inaugural addresses together. From tomorrow, it will be separately for both of you. So, environmental systems design and drawing, we will be talking about any environmental system, either in terms of water, wastewater, air, or solid waste, landfill. So the people who have taken open course with respect to environmental systems, from tomorrow, you will be having talks from industry experts, which are based on treatment technologies or new methods in design of environmental systems. So one small request, when the speaker takes over, I expect everybody else to keep your mics on the silent mode so that there is no disturbance in the communication. So first, today's speaker is Mr. Pravinjit KP. I would like to introduce him to all of you before he takes over. So Pravinjit is Managing Director of Paradigm Environmental Strategies Private Limited, which is called as Eco Paradigm. It is an environmental consultancy company, and he has a wide resume where he has worked in various fields. So I will just take 2 minutes to give a brief on his achievements. He is a master's in geotech from UBC Bangalore, and his BE is in civil engineering from MSRIT. He has also done his executive MBA from Commonwealth University, and currently his PhD, or he's pursuing his PhD from VTU. He has over 27 years of experience in the field of energy and environment, and he has been working with various top organizations like TERI, Kirloskar Electric, BORDA, including UNICEF and UNDP. He has carried out work for many of their subsidiary organizations also. He is a senior urban expert for projects funded under the International Climate Initiative and Low Emission Development, and he has also worked with various teams in countries like Germany, UK, Netherlands, China, Bhutan, and so many other countries. And within India, he has been working with almost all state government organizations in many parts of India. Among his many achievements, I would like to highlight one major achievement where they won the National Water Award 2019. This is the first prize for the Kundalahalli Lake Rejuvenation Project, which was undertaken by Eco Paradigm. And this award was instituted by the Union Ministry of Water Resources. Also, their organization has won the Nagar Ratna Award for the city of Nashik, which was awarded by the government of India. And they have also got recognition under the National Urban Awards 2008 for Adarsh School, and from the President of India, he has received the award for the thing. So this is a brief on the speaker today. I would very much like Pravinjit to address the gathering, and then he can take over the presentation. Over to you, Pravinjit. Just a second, everyone. Pravinjit will be taking over.
Hello, can you hear?
Yes, sir. We hear.
You're audible.
Sir, please go ahead. We can hear.
Yeah. So the screen visible?
Pardon, sir?
Is the screen visible?
No, Pravinjit. Screen is not visible.
How do I do that? How do I do that?
Sir, you can use that arrow mark, no? Right or bottom corner. There is an arrow mark with your. You can click that.
Okay.
You can click that, and you can go for window option to present your PPT. Before that, you must open your PPT file, sir.
Yeah, open the PPT.
Yes, sir. Then you can go with that option what I have told you.
1 minute, just a minute. Hold on.
Yes, sir. Yes. In that you must click your presentation. In window, no, you must click your presentation. Whatever you have opened, that will be displayed there. So you must click your presentation.
Can you see now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course.
Yeah, you can see.
Yes, yes. Of course.
Okay.
We can see.
Yeah, 1 minute. Okay, good morning. I'm Pravinjit. So I will be presenting on sustainability and civil engineering, which would be mostly related to green building and energy. So if you look at sustainability in the modern age, as defined by the UN, it means a development that meets the need of present without compromising the ability of future generations. If you see, there are some 17 sustainable development goals, SDG, and it starts from no poverty to gender equity to peace and etc. But in this 17, if you look at what we as civil engineers can affect positively or negatively, I will say about nearly 14 directly you can impact, and the balance also in a sort of indirect way. We will be having with some impact on the development of humanity. So if you look at the concept of sustainability, it's primarily on environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. Of course, we would come in a bit in economic and environmental as the technical sustainability. So these three together form the concept of sustainability. So why do you need sustainable building practice? If you look at the building industry, primarily as civil engineers, we are normally into building. So building the industry would generate almost 40% of the demolition waste. Yeah, and it contributes to almost what you call for the greenhouse gases, to 40% of the greenhouse gases, and 50% of the national waste production comes from the building sector. 50%, and the primary concrete making material, the emission of CO2 is largely attributable to the cement production. So if you see that small pie chart, you can see the industry is about 24% is the GHG emissions, building operations 41%, and building construction material 5.5, transportation is 16.3, and the rest. So you can see about almost 50% is coming from our civil engineering activities itself. So what do we do? Do we have alternatives? We cannot undo the damage, but we can mend our practice, we can alter and adjust it such a way that we can have a better world. So how can we as civil engineers contribute? Civil engineers have a leading role in planning, designing and building. It ensures a sustainable future by providing the bridge between science and society. After all, it's an application of science, and civil engineers contribute majorly towards sustainable development in comparison to other engineers of other fields. So we see in that 17 SDGs, I told you 14 or more is impacted by civil engineers. When I say impacted, it can be negative, and if you look at it on the positive connotation, we can actually be superheroes. So how would we have a solution? Yes, green buildings. It's mostly an in thing now, which is looked at as a panacea for sustainable future. It's a practice of creating structures and using processes that are environmentally responsible and resource efficient. So it means efficient use of energy, water and other resource, use of renewable energy such as solar energy, pollution waste reduction measures, which is a primary thing, and great indoor environmental air quality, which has a strong bearing on the human health and quality of living, use of non-toxic, ethical and sustainable material, and design that enables adaptation to changing environment. So this is what is in a core nutshell the green building. If we can combine all these 6 or 7 elements together, we can achieve what we call a sustainable future. So I have based it on this ancient Indian philosophy of the Panchabhutas. Panchabhutas are the basic core concept in the Indian tradition. So it talks about Akash, the space is what we can make it equivalent to, Vayu, the air, Agni, the energy or the fire, Jal, the water, and Prithvi. So human body is also made of all these 4 or 5 elements, and the whole world. So if we can design such a way that the 5 bhutas, the 5 elements are in harmony with each other, then you will having a living system which will be which is founded on the basis of sustainability. So when you're talking about space, now you can have this climate responsive architecture. So which means India is divided into, now if you look at India, the 6 climatic zone. So each zone has something which is traditionally used. There's a building design which is based on. Now what happens is most of the time you have Kerala type of architecture in Karnataka and the Japanese type of thing in some other place. You have a flat roof in high rainfall areas and in snowfall areas. These do not make sense. It looks neat. It looks like you have made a mini Germany or Italy in India, but it is not. It's not really blending with what we call sustainable principles. So this tropical architecture, which has evolved over so many years, is what is needed to be practiced. As civil engineers, we have a direct control on those things. Now, how could we blend this architecture Of course, architecture means the architects are also part of the story. But civil engineers, a lot of smaller projects are always designed by civil engineers. I mean, nobody really goes to architect in all the cases. So where you could influence, you could use these principles. So when you're looking at the light, the space, so you can increase natural lighting. So when you are talking about natural lighting, of course, this is again a bit related to architecture. You should go for high efficacy lamps and fixtures. Nowadays you got very good LED lamps and things like that. So try to use more of CFLs and LED lamps. Maximize daylight to reduce need for electrical lighting. Ensure occupied space have direct access to outdoor views. So which will also has something to do with mental well-being. Use of interior atriums, you have planters and big trees and things like that. Courtyards, clerestory windows, etc., which will allow natural sunlight to come in. And the most important thing is about the mental well-being is something which sunlight and human body is connected to. Then ensure all occupied space have access to daylight. Use a smaller footprint and narrower building depth so that the light penetrates to the interior of the building. That's most important. The building is broad. You can try to use light shelves to allow light deep into the interior. Reduce glare by sun shading, and interior or exterior window treatments or light shelves. And similarly, if you have excess light, especially towards the west side, try to use deciduous trees which can provide excellent sun shading, allowing light through winter and blocking unwanted light during the summer. So you play with your planning and your elements in the building design so that you maximize the use of natural lighting and minimize artificial electrical lighting. You can also provide individual control where lighting wherever feasible. Some very good case studies are there on solar passive architecture buildings, the CII building, the Terry building in Bangalore, where you could adopt some of the features. It's not that you can adopt everything in your buildings. You can do that. Minimize glare and visual discomfort from electric lighting sources. And also you can play with colors. Play with colors to achieve comfort. Yellowish, oranges will give you a lot of energy. Blue would make you cool and passive. So you can do a lot of things with light. Of course, there is a lot of software to model this, and a lot of architects do use these days. So if you have access to this, better try and use it and maximize this principles of using light as an element. So shade analysis I've already spoken. So second thing would be the air. You have to assess the ventilation requirement. So set the ventilation target depending on the function which the building is put to. And the NBC actually gives you a lot of data on air change requirement for different application. Then design the window systems in such a way that you have maximum cross ventilation, and you would not like to use artificial devices like fans and ACs. Yeah, so this is something which we can do as a civil engineer. This is always done when you are in the planning stage. So you could select efficient mechanical or natural ventilation system, assess the potential for heat recovery system, and then consider using zones to group areas with similar occupancies and ventilation needs. So this is something which we could do. This again during planning. Now, in ACs and things, there are a lot of newer technologies which are energy efficient. Something like this vapor absorption chillers and all can be used to reduce the heat load in the building. Strategies for comfort and control: provide individual controls for ventilation, operable windows which is timed with the sun path, so you can control the sunlight and the wind flow. Then we can also provide fresh air by having separate air intakes from pollution, tree, waterways, forested areas. All these things are something which you can act as a pollution barrier. Use carbon dioxide sensors, and with the help of building users and owners, produce pollution sources. Ensure that the indoor air is free of pollution. I mean, when you talk about the Agni principle, the fire or the energy, you design to minimize heating, cooling, lighting, and ventilation load. See, these are interrelated. The ventilation, the lighting, and the cooling, and these are all related. So, design an energy efficient envelope, appropriate insulation, tight construction, and high performance low E windows, because then this reduces life cycle cost. Avoid thermal bridges. Use continuous insulation or eliminate metal stud and outer walls so that your heat load does not permeate into the building. Optimize solar heat gain and reduce glare. So in India, it's mostly to cut off heat gain. So select glazing with appropriate ratio of visible light transmittance to solar heat gain coefficient, so the building can remain cool while allowing light to permeate in. Using trees and planting to effect shadows and reduce the solar gain. And locate and size fenestration, that is windows, to capture wind and fresh air. So these are different techniques to utilize the principle of fire and energy into the planning of sustainability. Use passive and active renewable energy. So design building for solar heat and light, control solar heat gain and glare. Design building to incorporate the site's wind and air resources. So study the Windrose diagram. Assess the feasibility of incorporating renewable energy into the envelope using solar walls, solar chimneys, and there are many stuff which you can get in. Right now, there's a lot of documentation and study materials on these principles in YouTube, so you could look into that. Solar electric, solar thermal, biogas plants. Biogas plant to have captive energy for the buildings, which can use waste generated within the buildings. Then if you have a larger project, you can also go for combined heat and power plants, which is a little different. I would be speaking a little later on. Then if your institution has biomass, you can go for refuse derived fuels, etc., which will provide you with alternate sources of energy. Yeah. Now linked directly energy is HVAC optimization. So you can, by proper modeling, you can reduce heat transfer to up to 40% and building energy consumption by 6%. So the key is to minimize the west facing walls. I'm talking with the context in India. Minimize west facing wall, reduce windows on that west wall, and this is something which you can help reduce heat gain. In a way, this if you go back to our Indian tradition, the Vastu science actually talks about thickening the west wall, making the wall west wall and providing smaller openings in the west side. Basically, it is a principle meant to reduce heat gain into the building. Then there are concept of earth air tunnel, where we use the principle of earth, where it maintains a constant temperature for most part of the year, which is equal to the average temperature in a year is maintained in the earth. So what we do is we provide tunnels under the earth and blow air. So what happens in summer, your hot air is sucked in, passes through this tube, which transfers the heat to the earth and cools itself, and then it is pumped into the building. So the building is cooled without any other refrigeration equipments. It is directly, the cooling happens because of loss of heat to the earth. And in winter, when you have cold conditions, the cold air is pumped to the tube, the tunnel, and it gains heat from the earth. And then when it comes in, you get a comfortable temperature inside the building. So typically, you can maintain something like 24 to 28 or 30 degree always in the building by using these principles. But for this, you need setback, a larger setback in front of the building. So this is possible with colleges, institutions, and all, where you can utilize the earth and use the earth to cool down buildings. Like in your BMS I've seen you have ACs everywhere. So this is not necessary if you can go ahead with this earth air tunnel. So this geothermal cooling is something similar. Is an earth air tunnel. Radiant cooling using concrete core temperature. See, Concrete core temperature is utilizing the mass to buffer the heat loads, similar to flywheel effect in case of load supply. It can reduce the cost by 6 to 12%, and you can also incorporate alternate energy sources. You would need a small AC to take care of the peaks. So you make it attenuate the conditions inside the buildings. Underflow heating, not really relevant in India, but you can use hot. It's typically used in European countries where the water which is heated up is used to heat up the building also. So you use, especially from waste to energy plants and things like that, the hot thing is circulated within the building to heat up the building. Panel heating and cooling. So all these are different techniques of which you could incorporate into building depending on what type of comfort condition you would like to use. Again, you can also, whatever fittings you use, try to use minimum, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency has the star rating. So 5 is the best. So minimum 3, somehow try to incorporate fittings which always conform to this. And then you can also automate. A lot of automated systems are there which you can control through your phones and things like that. Dusk on, dawn off switches for so your street lighting is linked to this sunlight, and then motion control switches in long corridors. All these would timer-based circuits. All this would help in a long way to reduce the energy inside which is used in the building. Water is the main thing. They say the next world war would be fought for water. Now, when you're talking about water, whatever little we have, we have to conserve it. So, which means you have to install water efficient toilet fixtures. So there are many devices which are there. Many of this the plumbing companies have invested in such devices. So you can use faucets which has air dispersion, which reduces the water being thrown out into from the tap. So you can use water metering, because that actually is linked to the pricing. So water metering actually helps you reduce the water consumption, because like they say, what you can measure, you can control. What you can't, you don't. So if you can have meters for water, you can actually save on water. Then try to maximize the wastewater recycling. So you can use a lot of innovative technologies are there, nature-based systems, which are very low on energy, low on chemicals, etc., which you could use to treat water and reuse it for flushing and all non-potable use. It all depends to the extent of the technology used. You can actually virtually drink it also if necessary. But at least if you do a tertiary level treatment, you can use it for non-potable purpose, which means at least 40% of the water, 40 to 60% of the water can be reused, which means your water bill straight away drops by 60%. That's important. So the Jal, then you can also augment your alternate sources of water, which means you install rainwater harvesting either rooftop or surface. A typical 30-40 site in Bangalore can harvest at least 100,000 liters, which is quite huge. So 100,000 liters, which will help a typical 4-member family to survive for at least 6 months. So 6 months, and if you couple with wastewater treatment, you can actually virtually prolong the use. So you can do that. And anyway, the reverse osmosis is actually banned because of, I think from next year, the Supreme Court has taken the decision not to allow reverse osmosis, because the reverse osmosis technically about 40 to 60% of the water is rejected, which is a waste. So try to avoid that, because the municipal water supply is quite good, it's filtered water. And if at all you have a concern, you can have a simple micro filter in the tap and then use it for all your purpose. The reverse osmosis also tend to remove all the essential salts, which will also lead to major health issues later on. Yeah, so this is something which you can do. On-site STPs, I told you already. So you can go on for a conventional system which requires power, or you can go for a natural system, what you see on the right side. So all this would help you realize 40 to 50 to 60% savings. All these are different technologies. earth, when you're looking at the fifth element, the earth, you have to try to design with salvaged or recycled or efficient materials. So lot of, see, now you have this manufactured sand, you also have recycled aggregates, RAS is what it's called, and the government has come out with a policy to incentivize use of RAS. In fact, there's a mandatory requirement for builders that I think you have to use about 20% of your aggregate should come from recycled materials. So this is something which you can use, try to maximize as much as possible. Use locally harvested or manufactured material, use materials with low environmental impact over their life, use low VOC material. So all this would help in having an environmentally sensitive building. Also design for flexibility, which means you don't have to break and rebuild for later, because you can't plan for the future. Try to make it as flexible as possible, which means you have less of destruction or waste of material. Design for disassembly, select building system that can be deconstructed at the end of building useful life. So this nowadays I see a lot of steel structural composite buildings, which is quite easy, because when you have to remove, you just remove it and go. Conserve topsoil for reuse. Typically for larger project, this is one of the primary environmental management measure, but you can use it for a lot of smaller projects also. Conserve the topsoil, because this is something which is very valuable. Then use the inherent strength properties of construction material. See, many a case for a ground plus one, I've seen most civil engineers going for RCC pillars and beams and complicated structure. Just because you've learned, you don't have to use it. The brick masonry itself can take over 4 to 5 floors, well designed ones. You don't need beams all over the place and columns all over the place. So try to use or minimize use of these materials. It's steel and concrete and all is not necessary. Only if it is really required from the strength point of view, try to use it. Otherwise, because that is the best recyclable material which you can get. Yeah. So minimize waste and reduce disposal of waste material. Somehow try to see, there are some recycling plants in Bangalore and a lot of places. They make paving blocks and other blocks out of that. Try to use as much as possible. Then provide built-in composting amenities, so that the waste which is generated within the premise is treated there itself. Select indoor finishes that are recycled or salvaged. So a lot of the paint and other materials are coming which are supposedly environmental friendly. Try to use that. It might look pricey at the beginning, but if you are the initial pioneers, later on when people join the movement, the cost will come down. Use soil cement blocks, fly ash blocks and things like that. Then of course plastic substitution is done in road construction. The recycled aggregate is also used. Treated water is what is mandated by law for construction. So if there is an STP close to your project, and if the water is of the standard which is needed for curing and concreting, try to use that, because it will be a win-win situation for both the generators of wastewater and for your project. Then use, once the building is built, you need your surfaces which are indoor air quality is improved. So select indoor finishes which have minimum pollution emissions. So many of this paint, which like I said earlier, they are certified as zero VOC certified. Some of these things you can see when a shopping complex or a mall is painted, you get in your eyes, eyes start burning. So this is all due to the paint. So that can be avoided if you use this zero VOC certified paint. You have green seal and things for paints and coating. And for carpets, you have this carpet and CRI certification. So see if you are using any carpets, then try to get this certificate stamping on that thing. And surfaces exposed to inhabited space, supply or return air should not trap or release dust, mineral or glass fiber. So all this is a thing which what I'm trying to say is, all these are mostly during the planning stage. So you would invest more time in planning, selection of material, and how you design, how you construct, so that your structure which you make, you will be proud of saying that it is one of the sustainable project. So, autoclave aerated concrete or the cellular concrete, they are very good as far thermal conditioning of building is concerned. Double glass windows to prevent heat into it. So all this, it's not, you can't bracket it. I've tried to group it in this 5 principles, but each one overlaps the other. So once you touch something on energy, then automatically your ventilation comes into picture, your heat gain comes into picture. So a lot of things are interconnected. So this is what it is. Now, how do you say whether your building is good or bad? Of course, one is about getting a certificate. Otherwise, you can just incorporate this principle and go ahead without any limelight. But if you're looking at formal certification, you have this green building rating systems, which are this different international agencies. And India, you have the green rating for integrated habitat assessment, or called the GRIHA. So it follows the 5R principle: refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, reinvent. So as far as depending on what elements you've incorporated, they give you points, and based on the points, you are a 5-star rating or you are a 1-star rating. But minimum, you should try to get at least a 1-star rating. Anything lower than 50 is not acceptable, because we are in the brink of so this COVID has brought humankind to its knees. It tells you how a small thing, which is not which you never could foresee, has crippled all the nations. Now, these things what we're talking about, sustainability, is something we have been talking since ages. So I don't think there's a reason why, as civil engineers, we can't achieve anything between 70 to 100. So if you are sitting with architects, convince the architect and make them change over to these principles, which will ensure sustainability. That's what I would say. So I'm a civil engineer, and I have a master's in geotechnical engineering, and I formed this company as EcoParadigm. What have we accomplished as EcoParadigm? So we, in 2006, started this company and decided to focus on environment. And we have, in the last 12 years, 14 years, we have done consultancy for solid waste management, which is one of the subjects which you would have as civil engineers. I don't know whether it's an elective, but we have offered consultancy for more than 13,000 metric tons per day. To give a perspective, Bangalore generates around 4,500 to 5,000 metric tons. So something like 2 times or 3 times Bangalore is what we have done. It affects the life of 65 million persons. Okay, 65 million or 6.5 crore. It's something like state of Karnataka. Then we have done wastewater treatment plant. We have our own unique technology where it's a natural system. We don't require electricity or chemicals or even human attendance to run the plant. We have got it's more than 25 million liters every day is being treated. Something like 20 lakh people, 2 lakh people, wastewater from 2 lakh people. Yeah, and we have got rainwater harvesting, which we have done, which is close to about 150 million liter per annum is harvested, which in terms of human equivalent, it is equal to assured water supply for 5,000 people, a small town. Yeah, so all these are civil engineering projects, right? Although it has an environmental purpose, there are many concepts which we have used, which all work on these principles of sustainability. If you see the places where we have worked across 9 countries in almost all the continents except South America and Antarctica and Arctic. Then you have this in the country we have got we have worked in more than 15 states now, right from Jammu to Kerala to Gujarat to West Bengal, and over 300 projects as of now. Lot of subjects: energy, software, civil engineering, basically design of slopes, buildings, etc. Some of our flagship projects I present here. It's a municipal solid waste manual for the country. It's called the CPHEO Manual 2016. We were the technical consultant for drafting this. We have a software called the SWAT tool for solid waste to energy project, which I will show a little later on. We have this hazardous waste landfill in Karnataka, It's our flagship project, which handles almost 40,000 tons of hazardous waste generated in Karnataka. We are right now on the verge of executing another project for the Goa state. So in the last 14 years, we have won 2 national awards. The first one you see in 2009 from the President of India, and this is for the National Water Award in 2018 for a lake remediation project in Bangalore. So this was the first prize. And then we have, together with the German Environment Agency, we have produced a policy document for resource and climate protection through integrated waste management in emerging economies and developing countries. Yeah. So all the projects which EcoParadigm does is based on the principles of sustainability. So you have these 3 pillars: effective use of resources, pollution reduction, and creating healthy environment. So you have biodiversity, effective use of resources, biodiversity enhancement, conservation of resources, which means you replace clay bricks, stones with fly ash bricks, try to use recycled materials and this. So the media we use, we have done a project, we have done the whole thing with the scrap materials, scrap tanks, scrap Bisleri bottles, scrap toy wheels, etc. So an entire STP which works. This is in the country Qatar, and it's a model thing because you are treating wastewater with a waste material. Then pollution reduction, waste and solid and liquid management indirectly impacts the air pollution and energy management. So that's a project which I'll be talking on. Healthy environment is definitely created when you manage waste. Some of our projects, this is a project which won us the President's Award in 2009. This is the project which won us the national first prize in National Water Award in Kundalari Lake. This is a large rainwater harvesting project where we harvest 92 million liter. Last year alone, 92 million liters were harvested. This is at Toyota, and with this project and a couple of allied activities, Toyota car factory recycles almost 90% of the water which they use. So 90% water savings is done because of these projects. Now you see, when you see this rainwater harvesting, you can recall your old tank project and your new tank project. Now all those things which you went for a site visits and did things, you can actually implement it and you can conserve water. And people who have been following news, you know the Cape Town story, where people were rationed with 25 liters of water every week. And India is staring at it. India, they say, is the 17th country which can land up in trouble. And probably the next Cape Town could be Chennai or Bangalore. It could be that these are the 2 cities which can get adversely affected by climate change. So if you can do, each one of you can do small or big rainwater harvesting system, you will have, you can moderate flood. So last year you saw the situation where India had, Kerala had floods, and then this side Latur you had drought, and so it's a great disparity is occurring, all because you are not able to manage this flood thing. So on one hand you have houses getting submerged and NDRF going and rescuing people by boat. On the other side you actually supply water by tanker trains to supply water. These things are all happening because we as civil engineers have just tried to manage a situation. Somebody wants water, you dig borewell. That's what is the situation, instead of trying to conserve what the bounty nature has given us. These are some of the projects. I will quickly show you another project. This is a project, every city is combined with 2 major environmental problems. One is solid waste and second is wastewater. Every city, every house also has a problem, and the cities, the major problems are environmentally, we have solid waste and liquid waste. So these 2 have to be combined, and power is another major issue in India. So power is the 3rd biggest problems a city faces. Along with this, there's something called finance. You would have heard stories or articles about where the waste workers were not paid salaries for 6 months and more. lot of protests have occurred in Delhi, in Bangalore, in many other states. So money is another thing. So if you're looking at sustainability, you have technical sustainability, you have environmental sustainability, and you have financial sustainability. So the project which I'm showing, where EcoParadigm was the designer, was trying to achieve all the three. So you can see we are treating the solid waste, we are treating the liquid waste, and we are producing energy free of cost. So your cost comes down. So this is what it is: the wastewater, the solid waste, and what we have done is we have put it into a digester. The digester digests it, anaerobic digestion, and then you get gas which is burnt in a gas turbine to generate electricity. And the waste heat, the smoke which goes out, has temperatures of 550 degree plus. So we take the heat and recover the heat to heat up the liquid in the digester, thereby ensuring mesophilic to thermophilic temperatures, which will make the reactions easier and quicker and produce more gas. So virtually nothing goes waste. The waste heat is taken back to heat up the digester. The gas is burned to get electricity. The sludge, which after digestion, the water is recycled back or sold as liquid manure. The solids which are trapped at the bottom as sludge is converted to manure and sold. So how we started it was, we initially did a lab study with various ratios. We found out the optimal ratio, and then decided that for a certain given tonnage, you can generate the gas, specific gas of 1,300 cubic meters per day. So we designed a project for 30 metric tons. 30 metric tons of solid waste, food waste, means a population equivalent of 25,000 people. So we got this 30 metric ton waste, and there were a lot of public toilets. So every day we were taking about 2 tankers of septage from public toilets. So together this is 30 metric ton. In a small area of 1.5 acres, we fixed up this plant, which is supposed to generate 3,300 kilowatt hours per day. So this is the project. So the source were food waste, segregated food waste. The sludge was from domestic wastewater. You have a co-digester which digests both, and then the methane is trapped and burnt in a gas generator to generate electricity, or it can be, we have not gone for the fuel option, and the digester sludge is converted into residential manure. So the components which go into it, you have a feeding hopper, you have a shredder which shreds this waste into smaller sizes, then it's put into a tank and then mixed with septage and then digested in a digester. So this is the real photo of this project. So to do this waste to energy, although it looks like an energy project, an electrical project, and a mechanical project from the look of this P&I diagram, it involves most of the civil engineering components, right from transportation subject to surveying to your environmental engineering, and then the only electrical part is actually burning the gas in a generator, transmitting the power out. Other than this, and a few mechanical elements of running a pump or running a shredder. Other than that, it's purely a civil engineering environmental project. So these are the live photos of this project when it was being executed, and it's a sort of interdisciplinary project. The excess gas when the generator is not working, you flare it up. So this was finally inaugurated in 2017. So some economics. See, as a civil engineer, you also need to know financial engineering or financial subject. So you need to know what is the cost, and which you would not have given much value when you were doing your estimation and costing and project management. These are all part of a real life civil engineering subject. So these things are. What does this mean as far as relevance to India? If you see the data here, we are the 7th largest country, and with only 1/6, with 1.3 billion people, which is constituting 1/6 of the world's population. We have very less access to resources. Your area is only 2.4%, and on this 2.4%, you have this 1/6 of the world standing on it. Your wastewater, we are only treating about 20%. Your solid waste is about 30% is what is being treated. So all this is what makes us, from the world view, an unclean country. Of course, thanks to Swachh Bharat, there are some efforts in this direction, but we are still a long way to go. So a lot of toilets have been fixed up now. The last 7 years, 100 million toilets are now there and people are using it. But what happens with this, the sludge from these toilets are that they need to be treated, and there's no facility. There are few states which are trying to install or implement fecal sludge management plants. Solid waste is still a problem in Bangalore also, and rest of the country it is the same situation. So this single project handles this twin problems of solid waste and the liquid waste and generates energy in the process. These are some numbers. So in a typical solid waste management project, you get the waste in, and then to manage the waste, you need to use electricity. So that's a requirement. Same thing with wastewater treatment. Wastewater treatment also, if you want to treat wastewater, you need to use electricity and chemicals. But by combining both, you can, instead of using electricity, you can actually generate electricity and make a revenue. That's what it means. So you can see what it converts to. If you are using a conventional business as usual model, you will be requiring for India about 8,200 hectares to treat wastewater, and about 1,000, so about 9,000 hectares of land is necessary to treat the solid waste and liquid waste produced in India. And you need about 6.7 million units of electricity per day to manage both the pollution, and which means about 20,000 tons of CO2 equivalent is produced every day. This is what it means if you're following the normal approach. But if you're following a sustainable approach, the model which I showed, it actually, instead of generating, it actually brings down. It's a negative emissions, because you are producing energy, and the footprint is also extremely low. This is what it means. We have also done many innovations in the municipal solid waste sector, which is all there in the CPHEO manual, because we don't look at a technology as a one-size-fits-all type of thing. No, it is always customized. That's where the planning is very useful. And we have done source segregation, effective collection, transportation. All these things are done. You in the right extreme, you see a processing, which is a decentralized processing, which is made with LDPE sheets, which anybody can do. So you can quickly fix it up and start composting. So this is our landfilling project. Photos there. We have, this is what I have already told you. This particular thing is what we did with the government of Germany, the pollution control department, for finding out the climate change aspects. These are some trainings which we do. Typically as civil engineers, we don't think training as a component, but really if you don't train, if the people don't run your plant the way you expect them to do, then it is going to fail. So you have to train the stakeholders in testing, characterizing, and troubleshooting, and all those aspects. So these are different projects which you have done. Awareness means including teaching the small children, school children. So this is something which we have done for various cities. This is the manual which I was talking about, the CPHEO manual, where we have designed the technical and the financial component. And contract management is one subject which I'm particularly fond of telling the civil engineers. This is an area where you need to be strong if you want to ensure sustainability of any project you do. So you need to know a little bit of contract law and study. It's easy thing is to just download few contracts, tenders which are being floated, and review it, and you will know what is the way the things are done. So different collection transport. See, we have done some collection transport in efficiency improvement project for Tirupati, and that's also in the manual. So how can typical refrain of all engineers, I'm not talking about civil engineers, but generally any engineer, is that you are not collecting solid waste properly, so increase the number of vehicles. It's not so. Sometimes more vehicles cause more problems. So you need to see whether you have an optimal number of vehicles and you have planned the routing and timing properly. So this is what we have done in Tirupati. This is place in Rajasthan. This is the waste to energy which I explained. This is the hazardous waste project in Karnataka, 100 ton per day or 40,000 tons per year project. So here, I don't know, I think it's an elective for you, but right from site selection, your geotechnical investigation, geological investigation, hydrogeological, all these things, then you select a land, then you design your slopes, your landfill, slope stability, your liner, impermeable layer, liner, your quarry pit for the clay. All this is part of civil engineering. So if you're lucky to work in one of these projects like this, you would be basically revising every bit of your subject which you learn. All your 52 subjects can be actually used in one project like this. One project like this landfill project or the rainwater harvesting project, you can virtually use everything. So this is something where you remediate dump sites. Now, there are a lot of dump sites in and around Bangalore and every place in the country. How do you remediate that? So that is something where again all the branches of civil engineering would come into effect. This is something which we did for Bhutan. This is a software we did, a decision-making tool. The bit of computer program which you learn in college with whatever user, because you, as a civil engineer, you would know what would be the user requirement. So you will be the best person to make a software rather than a software engineer making a civil engineering software. So this is where this would come. So we have done it. This is the only software available on the Swachh Bharat website. I think with this I close, but if you have any questions, you can ask me. Hello? Hello?
Pravinjit, hello.
Yeah.
You done with the presentation?
I'm done with the presentation.
Yeah. We had asked for queries. I don't think anybody has posted. Any of you, if you have any queries, kindly post it with your name in the chat box. Anyway, before they start with Pravinjit, I have one question.
Yeah.
A very past 3-4 years, Bangalore has been struggling with the solid waste management part. Correct?
Yeah.
Expecting or getting segregated waste was a big issue, and they tried to set up anaerobic digesters in various wards. So I would like to know from you, what is the current situation and whether the new scheme that they have set up, has it helped in getting segregated waste? If the waste is unsegregated, what is currently being done with it? And what is the latest update regarding the practices that are adopted in Bangalore?
Okay. Among the 15 biogas plants which were installed, only 11 officially got sort of commissioned. So four were under litigation, and in the 11, I think only 2 are working, 2 or 3 are working, but not with full optimal efficiency, but in a sort of way. The other 8 or so are under, again, contractual problems. This is why I told, when any civil engineer plans a project, the contract should be very strong. So this is not a technical problem; it's a contractual problem. So you are not paid me. I am the supplier of the biogas, and a contractor is supposed to operate. You are not paying me. I don't work. That's all. So it's not a technical issue at all. But the other 3 which are working, they are not receiving segregated waste. So when you don't get segregated waste, you need to do manual segregating in the premises, which is not, it's not designed for that. Neither is your contract. See, when you want to do manual segregation, you need to add 5 extra laborers, which is not in the contract. So it means a cost. It's not in this thing. So the design is done with an idealistic view, saying that you're going to get segregated waste. So when you ask me to put up a plant for a segregated waste, I put up a segregated plant. But then later when I get mixed waste, I cannot handle that in my premises because I don't have the labor or the financial side affordability for that. So this is one reason. And when you just put it without segregating or doing a sort of rudimentary segregation, the plant starts choking. So this is the reason why this anaerobic digestion.
In Bangalore, then we are back to square one, that a lot of unsegregated waste is going into landfills still?
As far as last year, we had a review, almost 2,200 tons were going into landfills. Okay, that is because there was this guideline from the NGT which said that the municipal solid waste plants should receive only segregated waste. Okay, so the solid waste earlier were designed for mixed waste.
Yeah.
So they had a capacity of around 2,000 tons or so. So 2,000 tons of segregated waste you could handle, but because of this particular interpretation, I will not say that is right or wrong. This one, it's the interpretation that segregated waste only should enter. So 700 tons of segregated waste was entering, balance of mixed waste was going. So it's a chicken and egg story. There are two ways of doing it. One, enforce segregation drastically, so that your entire 2,000 ton of segregated waste goes there, then the minimizes. Yeah. So it is a combination of contract, legal, and awareness. Three things together only can ensure that these plants, because municipality on their own cannot do much unless we segregate and give. And legally it should be very strong, and there should be a proper deterrence. So, for example, if you remember October 1st last year, the central government said that vehicles without pollution under control certificate, the fines is something like 2,000 rupees, or I don't know what it was, 2,000 or more. And there were kilometers of fellows standing outside this emission testing centers. So if you put the fear of God, people will comply, and then everything else will work.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Chandana of 6M has a question for you. The question is, do we segregate all waste like plastic, organic, biomedical, hazardous, and e-waste in our state effectively?
Yes. Now the question, I would split it like this. Institutional generators. You and I in a small house is not an institutional generator, but all institutional generators are supposed to segregate these things in these various categories which Chandana has mentioned. Okay, so a biomedical waste is segregated and given away to biomedical waste operators. The hazardous waste is separated and given to hazardous waste operators, that's like the one which is in Dabaspet. So, and the dry and wet is anyway, the bulk generators are supposed to handle wet waste in their premises, and the dry can be given away to authorized vendors. Now, when it comes to household, there are only three categories we segregate: wet, dry, and sanitary. In the sanitary, you can give away your biomedical waste also, if at all you have biomedical waste. All your expired medicines and things can be given away in the sanitary waste, along with your pads and diapers. And dry waste could be everything which can be recycled. So this is being taken by municipality separately. And I think in most areas, they take dry waste 2 times a week, and the wet waste is collected daily.
Yeah, Suryavamshi of 6M has question. Sir, can you please share the statistics regarding waste management in Bangalore?
Okay, so I don't have the right numbers as of now, but I can tell you there are about, I think, 9 plants, solid waste management plants, and together Bangalore generates about 4,500 tons of waste, total waste, or mixed, not in mixed, but sort of segregated way. In aggregate, 4,500 plus waste, and right now about 700 to 800 tons goes to this plants. The plant capacity is higher, but because of this interpretation of only segregated waste should go, only 700 goes. The rest 2,200 is going to a dump site in the vicinity of Bangalore. And typical technologies which are adopted here are composting. Composting, and this 11 project ideally should have handled 55 tons of biodegradable waste, but it is not working in that full capacity.
Okay. I think there are no more questions. Velumani sir, would you like to ask anything? Manish or Velumani sir? Okay. Anyone has any other question if to ask?
I saw something. What are some tips and suggestions you would give to young budding engineers to equip themselves that they become industry ready? Yeah. How long do you have time?
You can another 5 minutes is fine.
Okay. So the tips are simple. As budding civil engineers, please don't ignore any subject. It's up to you. Because I told you one simple rainwater harvesting, I'm talking about institutional rainwater harvesting, can cover all your subjects like contract, your hydraulics and hydrology and your irrigation structures, to structural engineering, to analysis, to soil mechanics and geotechnical engineering, to wastewater treatment. You name it, it covers everything. Yeah. So they have to do. Please concentrate on contract and finance. These two are very important because, you know, as an engineer, when you enter an industry, 2-3 years is when you do your designs, and after that you will be supervising somebody like you, younger guys, on design, and the rest you will be mostly managing human beings, resources. These are the 2-3 things which you do. Contracts and money is what you will be managing when you grow senior. Unless you are a specialized thing where you're a design engineer forever, which I doubt, always you will be supervising somebody who's designing. So you need to know how to design. You know how you also need to know how to execute in site. So don't think that you send a drawing and then expect somebody else in site engineer to execute. Unless you are able to execute it yourself, don't even call yourself a design engineer. So you would need to design, you need to execute, you need to know how to mark a thing, understand how site constraints change and how your design gets affected because of that. So 1-2 years you should be involved in site works and design engineering together. Also see the contracts and financial. These two, finance and contracts, are going to help you when you become at least 40 years. This is what I would say. Handling, is there any technology based without segregation? There are technologies that have own limitations, and it is customized for a particular type of region and the type of waste. And since waste is not a mono type of, it's not like a production sector where you get 2 kg of apple and 1 kg of tomato. It's always changing, so it's very difficult to rely on technology. Plastics, you have technologies which can segregate various kinds of plastics, but no, I would not, nothing better than a human being, because even the best MRFs, you can see on YouTube and all, where they have projects in US and UK and Europe, where some of the best recycling industries, you still have human beings doing the job. There's nothing which better than that. And as long as you segregate, because the waste is produced in a segregated fashion at home or in an institution. Nowhere do you have soil and paper and vegetable peels together. Kitchen generates vegetable peel, your dust is from some area, paper is in some other area. When it's generated separately, why do you want to mix it and then try to handle with the technology, is what I would say. Recently, we're seeing that the surge in people switching to disposable materials, such as people are maybe backing would use. No, that is the thing because of this COVID and things like that. But backing about using steel cutlery, I would say the simplest thing is carry your own steel cutlery to the hotel and take it back. So thereby, you are taking you are sure about what you're using. You are not bringing out disposable material. That's the ultimate. I think COVID is teaching us a lesson. Please bring your own cup and plate. That's the best thing. Next, there can be Cape Town that can be taken as action on the. See the Cape Town principle. This thing is about water crisis. You have to recycle water at the best. Minimize the use of water. Use degradable type of materials for your cleaning. And please don't use your toothpaste and face wash, which use microplastics. That's the worst thing, because no treatment technology can remove it. Try to use as much natural system so that treatment plant can remove. Recycle if possible, recharge or harvest rainwater as much as possible. That's all I would say as far as water is concerned for everybody.
Okay, I think Pravinjit, it's time for the next thing at 12.
Okay.
So thank you very much from my side. And Velumani sir, you would like to say something?
No, ma'am. Sir, speak about waste to energy, and in all aspects, you have discussed about the waste management, starting from the micro level to macro level projects. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Velumani. Thank you, Prasanna.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.